Introduction to Geminate Verbs. Well, we have finally come to our last type of weak verb, and these are the geminate verbs. So what is a geminate? Well, a geminate verb is one where we have identical second and third root letters. So if we put down our placeholders for our three radicals, three root letters, these two, second and third, are identical. And usually they will drop a geminate and become monosyllabic, so this will drop. And often that dropped geminate becomes a dagesh forte. And in fact, what will happen is it will always be a dagesh forte if it can. Now, if you have, what do I mean by if it can? If you drop a geminate and you have an ending, whatever it is, let's say a or u, let's say u for instance. If you have any sort of ending, consonantal or vocalic, then you'll see the dagesh forte here. If you have no ending, you cannot put a dagesh forte here because you can't have a dagesh forte in a letter at the end of a word. We saw one instance where we had this here, dagesh, actually that was dagesh lene, remember that? We had this weird construction here, but that was a dagesh lene. So I can't think of any examples where you have a dagesh forte end of a word. I thought for a moment this was, but that was dagesh lene. So, if you compare, or if you look at your verb table at the back of Ross, page 554, at the geminate verbs, or any other tables you have, and you check them all, you'll see, I checked most of them, I don't think I'm wrong in saying this, that you will always have the dagesh forte there. If you drop the geminate, you'll always have it there, as long as you have something after it. But if you don't have anything after it, if your geminate letter is the very last thing, then it won't be there. So, it seems to be a consistent rule. Okay, what do we have? Let's look at some actual geminates. We have two types, first of all. We have dynamic and stative. And so it's not a bad idea to become familiar with some of these because they're a little bit more difficult, at least I find them a little more difficult to recognize in a text, especially the ones that become monosyllabic, or especially the forms where they become monosyllabic. So it's good to have some of the actual words or verbs at least somewhat familiar. The most common one here is savav. It means to surround or go around. These numbers here are the number of occurrences in the Hebrew Bible according to my search and accordance. So they may not be exact, but they give a pretty good idea. And this, I believe, is one of our paradigm verbs. You should see it there. Savav, yes, that's the verb that Ross uses for the active. And for the passive, or not passive, for the, I shouldn't say active, you see. If you call this active, then you tend to call this passive, but that's a very different concept. This is dynamic versus stative. I haven't been terribly consistent with this, but if you look at the tables, you'll see he uses kal, or kal, which means to be small or swift. He uses that for his stative paradigm verb. He's got two columns, right? The active in the kal and the stative in the kal. And he uses this for the active and this for the stative. By the way, in the PL, kal can also mean to cause to be light, to be to curse. So it's quite a different sense than to be small or swift. Okay, let's look at the rest of these here. Arar means to curse. And this is, you'll certainly come across this one, it's quite common. And in fact, we have a section, a module on this verb in particular, because it's really doubly weak. It's got two ratios, and so it can't double in there. It's actually, if you think about it, it's triply weak. You've got an aleph, first aleph, and two ratios. But the fact that it's first aleph doesn't really affect things, so that's not too bad. Shaddad means to devastate. We have a few here that end with two dalets. Shaddad, madad means to measure. And down here, nadad means to wander. And I suspect this is related to the land of Nod, where Cain is sent off to wander in the land of Nod. So I think that's probably a noun. I haven't checked it up, but my guess is that that would be from the same root. Of course, as a noun. So shadad to devastate, madad to measure, nadad to wander. Parar, another double resh one actually, to break. And balal, to mix. I don't recall reading this one in the text, but I think I've seen the rest. Okay, stative, ra, to be bad. This is very common. So resh ein ein is what this actually is. And I'll tell you right now, we'll deal with this later as well, but if you see two syllables with a patach, you should be thinking geminate. If you see, two consonants with a patach, and you think it's a verb, think geminate. If you see two consonants with a kametz, something like this, you should be thinking hollow verb. There's some overlap, or there's some similarity between hollow verbs and geminates, as we'll see. But one of the differences is that with these forms that are monosyllabic, patach indicates geminate, kametz indicates hollow. So that's just a useful thing to keep in your mind. So, ra means to be bad. Sham means to be desolated. Kal, I already talked about that one. It means to be light or small. Chan, to be gracious. That's theologically important in the Bible. Tam, to be complete. You run into that one a number of times. Chat, to be shattered. Okay, has a close-in meaning here. To break, parar. Chat, to be shattered. Of course, these are stative, but somewhat similar. Rav, to be numerous. This doesn't have that many occurrences in the verb form, but it shows up as a noun a number of times, and as an adjective, this root here. Dam, to be silent. You could think of the English word to be dumb, meaning mute, to be silent, just as a mnemonic. Mar, to be bitter. Mara, of course, is one of the places that the Israelites reached before they reached the land of Canaan, and that means bitter water. And when Ruth comes back from Moab to Bethlehem, she tells the people, don't call me, no, sorry, not Ruth. When Naomi comes back with Ruth, Naomi tells the people, don't call me Naomi, call me Mara, because she's bitter. Anyway, now, so here's some examples of geminate verbs, and if you look at them, what do we notice morphologically? These all have 3 letters, don't they? And these have 2 letters. And if you look at your table, you'll see that the perfect 3ms, savav is the one we have. There actually is a short form as well, sav, but it's the dynamic ones that have the 3 letters, and the stative ones tend to drop. Okay. I have one other example here, or one other verb I want to look at. This is halal, and this is a homonym. So actually, this is there are 2 different verbs that are spelled the same. They spell the same, therefore sound the same. The first one means to defile oneself or to pollute, and the other one means to begin. And it's quite common, 136 times, like one or the other there. So it's you need to go with context to figure out if it means to defile oneself or pollute or to begin. Now, is that all I wanted? Okay, so that was our intro to geminate verbs. What we're going to do, as we have done in the past, as we normally do, is to look at the cal in some detail, and then we'll look at the nifal. We'll look at the PL as well. The PL is completely regular, so the module there is just to show you how it looks. It's not really necessary, I suppose, and then we'll look at the hifil and the whole file. We'll also look at arar and a couple of small things. So let's turn to the cal.